Shakira. I was born in London, born and raised in London. My mom's side of the family is from Nigeria, my dad's side from Jamaica. Yeah, I grew up with two sisters, so I'm the middle child, one older, one younger. Yeah, that was quite interesting because my mom does say I have that big middle child syndrome, so I always kind of felt, because I'm not the oldest, I'm not the youngest one, I always felt like I had to be like big and be noticed because the little one got everything and the older one was responsible and it was me. So anyway, yeah, like what I really feel like sharing with you guys today is just kind of some of the experiences that I've been through in my life, which some have been quite adverse situations, but just to the glory of God, like the way God's just turned things around. And I just want to encourage anyone here today, like whatever you've been through, that actually God is going to use that thing for His glory. So, as I've said, I've got two sisters. With my older sister, we share the same dad, and my little sister has a different dad. So when we were growing up, my dad was, he and my mum weren't together, but I knew who he was, you know, I would see him occasionally and stuff like that, but I always felt like I wasn't good enough because he would be there and he wasn't there, he'd come and see us, he wouldn't come. So I was kind of like, well, why doesn't he like me? I thought, oh, why doesn't he like me? You know, then I thought, maybe if I was a boy, he might like me. Just lots of different thoughts kind of went through my mind. I never really felt like I was loved. And my mum, you know, she always would say to my dad, you know, these are your children, come and see them. You know, it was left open to him. It wasn't like she didn't badmouth him or anything like that. But for whatever reason, you know, he had his own struggles going on and other children as well. So just through like my childhood, say around 5, 6, 7, I just had this really strong sense of, I wouldn't say abandonment, but just like, I just felt like I wasn't good enough. I just thought, well, he should be here. I really felt the absence of him, if that makes sense. So when I got to like age 7, my mum had a new partner, so this was my stepdad, and that's how I got my little sister. So I felt kind of like, oh yeah, like now there is a dad. Like, again, I didn't call him my dad, I knew who my dad was, but it was just nice to have like a male presence in the home. You know, he'd cook and stuff like that. It was just really nice. Like, I remember that Sunday morning, I didn't go up to the church, so Sunday morning would be like cooking, so you'd hear the music from downstairs and you smell the smells coming upstairs, like ackee and saltfish and all the good food that I really love. So for a few years, things were okay, but just, you know, when you're younger and there's just little things that don't make sense to you at the time, there were a few things that I kind of thought, like my mum, she kind of started to change a little bit. My mum's really outgoing, really bubbly and stuff, but then she just became this kind of quiet sort of person, and she wasn't the same kind of woman. And I remember one morning, like hearing all this noise and like running downstairs and seeing like my stepdad like really beating my mum, and I was like, you know, I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, get off my mum. I was really upset. I was trying to I ran upstairs. I was trying to get my older sister, you know. So that was the only time I saw that. But later on, I found out that actually that had been happening a few times, and you know, he had been like beating my mum and stuff like that. So just I just began to feel a bit confused because I was kind of like, okay, so it's really good to have this person in the house, but then now he wasn't like what we thought he was, if that makes sense. Like, so yeah, I'm gonna like kind of fast forward a few years anyway. So now I'm in school. He had gone away, so I remember being in primary school, and my mum would always take me and me to school, my little sister to nursery, and there was a friend of ours also that she would take as well to school. And I remember all of a sudden one day, my mum wasn't taking us to school anymore. Now it was my friend's mum. She would take us to school, and so there was just like a few months or a bit of time. I can't remember exactly how much time where like my mum wasn't taking us. But again, kind of thought, okay, that's just how things go. So what I didn't know at the time was that actually my stepdad had actually been like abusing my older sister. And at that time it had come into the light, and you know, things were happening, court case and all that sort of stuff was going on. So, but again, I didn't find this out till many years later. So I kind of like, again, because he had gone away and I didn't know all this stuff at the time, it just got to me like, okay, another man has come and then stayed with us for a bit, and then he wasn't here. So I still was like, okay, there's got to be something wrong with me and with us because nobody kind of stayed around, you know. And it's quite funny because at that time I used to go to a Catholic primary school, and around the age of 10, that's where I discovered my love for music and singing. And it's really funny how God uses things, you know, like as you get older, you can kind of see the journey that He's taking you on. So when I was 10 years old, there was an Easter play at my school, and I got to play the part of Jesus, which was a bit of controversy in the Catholic school. They're like, you know, Jesus, He's a man, this is a little girl, she shouldn't be playing. You know, there were a few people, there were a few people that weren't too happy about me playing Jesus, but for me it was great. I got to be in this big play, and it was just a really beautiful experience. And some of those songs that I sung then have like stayed with me forever, and I really felt like that God used that experience to remind me of Him as I got older, and I'll explain. But yeah, so I love to sing, I love music, I love to dance and things like that. But when I kind of got to about secondary school age, this is when kind of things just weren't making sense to me. Like I would have like these memories of things, and it was just really like I would think about something and think, well, hang on a second, that's really weird. Like just little snippets of things, like things that people said or something. And as I kind of got older, it kind of came to light that actually that I had been abused as well. I didn't remember a lot of it, so I blocked a lot of it out. So I think when I got the realization of that's what happened to me, it just became like that was my reality. Like I am an abused child. That was what I had. That's the mentality that I had. Didn't matter what was going on, every kind of action, everything I did was like, well, this is what's happened to me, so this is why I am the way I am. And so what I want to kind of talk about today is just how God, when we get Christ in our lives, how He, you know, the Bible says that He gives us a new identity, we're a new creation. And sometimes, for me anyway, there was a temptation to, even after I got saved, there was a temptation to kind of still kind of be like, well, I'm not this new person because all this stuff's happened to me, so I'm still that person. It just didn't make sense to me how I could be a new person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, just what I really wanted to share today was just about really having your identity rooted in Christ, and not in what you do or what's being done to you or what, you know, your teacher told you when you were 5 or you're not going to do anything, or, you know, because a lot of times now we don't think about our words, when, you know, words are very powerful, and we create worlds when we speak, and if you've constantly been told as a child, you know, you're not going to be anything, you're not going to, you know, sometimes it might not even, sometimes the voice is not an external voice, sometimes the voice is from within. So you can have voices from outside, be it teachers, be it parents that will say, oh, you're really bad, you're bad, and so you hold that thing with you. Or it can be a voice from inside, usually the enemy saying, no, you're not a good person, you're not, you know, just, and for me, I went through a lot of that, just voices saying, and it wasn't from external, it was actually external voices would be like my mom, my family. I was always encouraged, like, you know, you're great, you know, you can do great things, but just something inside was like, nah, but that doesn't make sense. I would see people, you know, excelling and doing well in life, and I think, that's really great for them, because I've always been an encourager. I didn't know it at the time, I've always been an encourager, but I could never encourage myself, so other people would say, yeah, such and such is doing this, she's doing well, he's doing this, it's great, it's great. But when it came to me, I'd be like, nah, just, you know, so yeah. Basically, one of the biggest, I guess, the biggest impacts on my life where the Lord is concerned is, I remember it being, like, so I've mentioned obviously that I found out that I was abused, but also when I was about 12 or 13, I also had another abusive situation whereby a group of older, I mean they were still young, but a group of older young men, it was like a grooming ring, so there were a few girls that were involved in that, and I was one of them. So again, I just had this sense of all my life of just being a plaything, you know, like I'm just something. So yeah, it was difficult. So I kind of had those thoughts going round and round and round, and so it kind of coloured everything that I did. So for example, I've mentioned that I love to sing and I like to perform, but when I was growing up, I kind of just thought, I can't do that stuff because I'm in the public eye and people are just going to know, oh gosh, she's the girl that's been through this or been through that. And it's really weird because, as I said, it wasn't any external voices, but within, it was saying, you know, you can't do that, you can't do that. And I just believed it, and I just thought, well, yeah, that's just me. Why should I be able to do that? And I'll never forget, there was a time when I had been, so I didn't grow up in a church, but I've got an auntie and an uncle who are ministers, and just through my childhood, they had their own ministry, they had their own church. I would go there sometimes, and I would kind of worship with them, but I didn't really know what was going on. It was just like, oh, this is my family, my cousins, this is what they do. So when I was with them, I would do that. But I remember my auntie always saying to me, you know, she'd tell me about Jesus, and I'd just be like, I'd get a bit excited and be like, yeah, this Jesus guy, he sounds great. And then I'd kind of go home and be like, yeah, but it's not for me, because why would he like me, or why would he love me, or stuff like that. But I remember there was one time when I was reading my Bible, and it was in Psalm 139, and it talks about, where can I go from your spirit? You know, if I ascend into the heavens, you're there. If I descend into the depths of Sheol, you're there also. And it's like that thing, it just popped out at me. It just became so real. So it's sort of like in my brain, it was like, okay, so even when I was, you know, in this really low place, like, you were there, Lord? Like, really? Like, you were there? And then even in the high times and the great times, you were there. And it's almost like, I just felt at that moment like God saying to me, I've always been with you. And it changed. It took a while. It didn't just like automatically click, and then I was like, ooh, no, it wasn't like that. But it just got to this point where I was just like, wow, like, so God's been with me all that time. And then I really began to realize, actually, there is a voice. There's a lot of these voices going around, but there is one voice that I recognize, but I didn't know it was the Lord. But there would be a voice that would say, I do love you, I do. But it was so small, like so quiet, that the other voices would be, you know, overpowering. And yeah, like, basically, I just, at that moment, just had a realization that, you know, the Lord has been with me this whole time. Yes. And for me, that, I would say, thank you, that was the beginning of just change in my life, basically. So, throughout my teenage years, because I now understood and knew the experience, I could make sense of the experiences that I'd been through. Because obviously, as a child, sometimes when you go through traumatic experiences, you block them out, or you kind of, there are coping mechanisms. But then as I got older, it started to really resurface. These things started to resurface, and I'd think, what's going on? Like, you know, I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be this bubbly person, but I just couldn't be that person. I was just low all the time, just really, really low. And yeah, I was suffering from depression. I didn't really know. My mum used to say to me, you know, I think you should see the doctor, because I would have like maybe a week, 2 weeks of just being in bed, just crying, sometimes just being numb. Sometimes it was really low, like crying and stuff. Sometimes it was just numbness, like I couldn't feel anything, whether it was good or bad. Like things, people would say things and you're supposed to react, but I just was incapable. And it's like, almost like, I kind of can describe it as like being, so me on the outside was just this person, but the inside me is like in a cage, saying like, you know, knocking, saying, I want to get out, like I want to, you know, I want to say something, I want to react, but it's like on the outside, I just couldn't, I wasn't able to do that. And I did eventually go and see the doctor, and, you know, they had like some counselling and stuff like that, and, you know, they wanted to kind of look into like more deeply, like what was going on, whether it was bipolar disorder or clinical depression. So I had just minimal mental health intervention, but even at that time, I really had begun to feel like, I know that Jesus is real and he can help me, but then it was still this battle, like, I've got to do this by myself, but know that the Lord is there. And it was kind of like just a real internal struggle. And I remember that I had begun to see, so getting referred to the GP, I had begun to see a psychiatric nurse, and I went to her for a few sessions, and you know, I'm not knocking the mental health profession. I think they do an amazing job, but just for me, it just didn't feel like the right way to go, because by this time I had begun to read my Bible a little bit more. I had begun to kind of get to know about more who God was, but I felt a really strong sense, I don't know where it came from, but I just felt a really strong sense like, it's going to be God that's going to help me. This stuff is not going to work for me, but still I kind of went through the motions, mental health, that kind of stuff. But it got to like one appointment where I just thought, do you know what, I don't want to be here, this is not going to work for me. And believe me, at this time I was still having a lot of struggles, you know, I was having panic attacks, I was suffering from insomnia, just because it was like these recurring thoughts were just going around, you're this, you're this, you're this. It was like literally like, you know, the Bible talks about the enemy being the accuser, that's what it was. It was, I was being accused over and over and over again, and it was just, at times it would be too much, like, where to the point where I would kind of just withdraw, because I felt like there was so much stuff going on in my head, I could barely concentrate on, you know, usual things like working or, you know, so I had a bit of time off sick and stuff. But in this particular appointment, I just decided, yeah, this is not going to work for me. I want God to help me, but I still didn't have the words, if you like, to be able to verbalize that, or to say, or even the faith, to be honest, to kind of know. I wanted God to help me, but I still didn't know, like, okay, how is that going to work? Or, you know, I wanted to work everything out for myself. So, yeah, like, by this point, I had actually started working at the school that I went to as a child. And in that school, when I was at school, I loved learning, I loved school, but I just think because of the things I was going through outside of school, it just wasn't a great time for me. And yeah, I couldn't really concentrate a lot, and, you know, there were lots of things going on, but I'd come back to this school, and I remember, I'll never forget when it was one of my aunties, because I'd been unemployed for about 6 months, and she had said to me, oh, there's a job going. I'm like, why on earth would I go back to that place? Like, I don't ever want to go there again. But even as I was saying that thing, there was something inside me that was like, yeah, but you're going to get the job. Like, that's just, so it was like, yeah, it was like a double, still again a battle kind of thing. Like, on the one hand, why would I want to go and work at that school? I hated it. But on the other hand, you're going to get that job. So lo and behold, I went, I got the job. And yeah, it was really difficult at first, because I think because of what I had been through, I kind of just associate, the place just reminded me of being that, you know, that 13-year-old, that 14-year-old that was going through that stuff. And it was really interesting, because by this time I was an adult, but in the school, being in the staff room and stuff, I would still be asking teachers for things as if I was a student. I was like, Miss, can I use that? And people would look at me like, what's the matter with this girl? But it was just like, it kind of took me to this place, like, backwards. But now I can see, looking back, I can see that actually that's where, like, God reminded me, God needed me to go back there so that I could face everything full on. And it was very difficult. I had some really hard times, but being in that place, it kind of took me back to where I was. And that's where I met Karen again, re-met Karen. Hey, Karen. And the gospel choir was happening at that time, and I had just been, for a few years, just not singing. Like, I've always, for as long as I can remember, I've always been able to sing. But I just wasn't singing anymore. I felt like I really lost my voice. And so when I went to the choir, it was just like a place of just like peace. It was like home. It was like coming home. Tuesday to Wednesday, the rehearsals used to be, and I would be so excited to finish my working day so I could just get into gospel choir afterwards. And I didn't sing straight away. Like, it's not like I just went in there and started like, no, it wasn't like that at all. It took a long while for me to sing. Karen would kind of like ask me to sing, and I'd just burst into tears, or it was just like, yeah, I just wasn't myself. But through going back there, I received so much healing, just singing words of God's love, even just being in the presence of the children and being with Karen. It was just like, yeah, it was just like healing for me. And I think that at that time, I would say things kind of got the worst they'd ever been before they started to get better. So by that, I just mean, I remember there was a day when I'd been sitting at my auntie's house and she was praying for me, and literally, like, all these voices were just saying all these things like, you're nothing, you're useless, you're this, and it was almost like, do you know when you go into like a crowded room and loads of people are talking? That's what it was like, just all these voices, and I remember just feeling like this weight was just sitting on top of me, like I just felt physically heavy every day, and I called it, even now I call it like a grey time, because everything to me seemed grey, like even physically looking at colours and stuff, everything was dim, like nothing seemed alive. But at that time, even during all of that, I remember another, like going to sleep, because I had been staying with my auntie, because I was getting really paranoid, so even like when I was staying at my house, I just felt like I wasn't safe there, so I stayed with my auntie for a little while, and there was one night where I was asleep, and as I said, these voices were going, and then I just remember just screaming, Jesus, like I just screamed, and it was almost like somebody came and, you know, hugged me. So I was kind of huddled, but the person just came and just hugged me, and it's like all the voices that were coming were like bouncing off. And in that moment, like the Lord just really, he just revealed himself to me. And I remember, like, you know, by this time I had started going to church and stuff like that. I go to a church called Jubilee Church, and it's a really great place. I've met some lovely people there and stuff. And I just remember people were praying for me, like, constantly. I would speak to, like, the pastor there, and he would pray for me. My auntie was praying for me, like, people were praying for me, and I still felt like, it was so funny, because now I can actually laugh, but I would sit in a service, I would hear the word of God, I'd be really, like, encouraged, inspired, and then literally, as soon as I leave, it would just be like everything back again. And I remember I used to think to myself, this one pastor in particular must think this girl is crazy, because every week on Sunday I would speak to him, I'd be like, Pastor Chris, I just feel like this, and I'd just be bawling my eyes out, and he'd be just saying to me, he's in Nigeria, I said, Shakira, don't worry, and he'll pray with me, like, and this was going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then I remember the definite turning point was one, they were preaching a series about forgiveness, so each week there was a different aspect of forgiveness, and it got to one week where they were talking about forgiveness of self, and I suddenly realised that's what it is, because I understood, like when I heard the gospel that, you know, Jesus Christ died for me, he died, saved me from my sins, he died to redeem me, I got it. I was like, yeah, like I believed it fully, but then there would still be something that said, yeah, okay, so he's forgiven me, but I don't forgive me. That's what it was like. It was like, well, yeah, Jesus has forgiven me, yeah, that's great, but nah, I don't forgive myself. And so on this particular day, the pastor was just speaking about forgiving yourself, and it's just like something just went click. That's what it is. And literally, I closed my eyes. We were at the end of the sermon. We were praying, and I actually felt somebody's hand on my shoulder, and I opened my eyes. You're not supposed to open your eyes. You know they say, can everybody close their eyes now? But then I felt someone's hand on my shoulder, but I opened my eye, and I was like, wait, no one's touching me. Like, okay, that's weird. And that day, it's like I forgave myself, and from that day, things started to get better. And it was still kind of difficult, but things started to get better because I started to believe, actually, what does God say? Who does God say I am? You know, he says I'm his precious child. He said that I'm seated with Christ in the heavenly places. So when this voice is coming to me saying, well, you're this, you're that, you've done it, it's like, actually, no, that's not true. And so my encouragement, I bring this all back around to say, my encouragement to everybody today is just like, there are going to be a lot of voices, you know, and I want to just take a minute to speak to the young people in particular at the moment. There's going to be a lot of voices in the media, you know, saying you've got to be this, you know, on TV, girls with no clothes on, and music saying this, and things talking about this, movies, different stuff, influencers saying you have to be this, you have to be that. But I really want to impress on you that actually, who does God say you are? Like, you need to know your worth. You're not just somebody's plaything, regardless of what you've been through or what you haven't been through. You're not what you do. You're not what's been done to you. You are actually a precious child of the Most High God. And to actually have to live with that reality and to walk in that reality every day, it just changes things. Because things no longer become, it's no longer like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? You can actually approach things and be like, do you know what? Actually, I have a purpose. God has given me a purpose. Sometimes you might not know what that is yet, but to wake up every day and have purpose, for me, that's like the best thing ever. Because during my time of depression, I would actually sleep days away and wish days away. I could sleep pretty much the best part of 2 weeks, and then I'd say, oh, what's the date today? And somebody would say, you know, oh, it's the 26th of October. And I'd be like, what? Like, just a minute ago, it was the 1st. Where did those days go? But that was literally the reality of my life, sleeping time away, because it felt like I don't have anything to live for. Excuse me, I was never suicidal, I thank God for that, but I literally just had nothing to live for. And now, I just feel like, wow, despite having been through all these experiences, God has been able to just turn my life around and to use me. I work with young people, I work in schools, I can just relate to them. And it doesn't mean that you have to go through something really, really bad and then, oh, that, you know, just because you go through that, then now this is what your work's going to be or whatever. No, but I just really feel like there is no such thing as just a random occurrence. Like, things happen, and actually we serve a God who is a God of order, who's a God of purpose. And when something happens, instead of looking at the situation and saying, oh, why did this happen? Why? Ask God, Lord, what do you want me to do with this? What shall I do out of this? And yeah, my encouragement is just that I can stand here before you today and say, like, I never, ever, ever thought that I would share, like, certain experiences with people. I just thought, nah, that's meant to be, you know, kept. But I really do feel like there is this thing about secrecy that kills, because you feel like, I've got to keep this thing to myself, nobody must know. And it is a vulnerability in sharing something. But you know what? The minute that you share it with obviously trusted people, with the right people, whatever it might be, the enemy doesn't have any power over it anymore, because actually you've let that thing go, you've let it open. I think for me, I always had this fear that people would know that I've been raped, people are going to know that this has happened. And it's like, well, yeah, people do know, but now what? Like, okay, what does that mean? Do you understand what I mean? So for me, like, I just really want to impress on you guys, like, just the transforming power of Christ, really, like, you know, to be able to wake up, for me, to be able to wake up every day and not have that weight. It's actually, I remember for weeks and weeks and weeks after this thing was lifted, I was just like, I feel so different. Like, I actually feel physically, I don't have that weight anymore. And it's not to say that I don't have bad days or some days that I get a bit this or that, you know, that's life. But honestly, like, my life has just changed. It's changed around. And I'm still making mistakes. I'm still learning. It's still a process. But I can honestly say that God has just, like, He's just changed my whole life. And I went from a place of, you know, just feeling worthless, feeling like nobody wanted me, to now feeling like, do you know what, I have purpose, I'm loved. Even if nobody else loved me, which isn't true because lots of people love me. But even if nobody else loved me, to know actually that I'm loved by God, it blows my mind. Like, it actually blows my mind. And one of the things I really want to also encourage everybody about is, like, just developing that personal relationship with God. Because even again, like, when I began to know who Jesus was and I began to know who God was, at times it was still like He was this far away God that I've got to do these rules and regulations and then, you know, He'll be happy with me, or that was my mindset. But actually, to be able to wake up in the morning and say, you know, morning Lord, sometimes I go on walks and I just look at the trees, and I'm a bit of a romantic, so yeah, I like to look at trees and birds and stuff like that and say, like, wow. But just to be able to know that, you know, when you're praying, be confident, like, you're talking to the Lord. And that's another thing about prayer. I used to think, okay, prayer's got to be, you know, in the name of Jesus and this kind of, and yeah, there's different types of prayer, but it's communication with God, listening to Him, and then also responding to Him. And yeah, just to encourage you, whatever it takes for you to get to that place of, like, you know, whether it's singing a few songs of worship or reading some scriptures, to really just kind of get into the zone, if you like, whatever that means. Just to encourage you guys, because yeah, like, he's just changed my life, and I'm so glad. I never thought I'd say it, but I'm so glad that I had the experiences that I've had, because now I don't know who I would be if I hadn't. Like, I just feel like before, it's almost like it's a positive thing. Before, my negative experiences, they shaped me in a sense of, I was like, that's what I've been through, that's who I am that person. Everything I did was out of that identity. But now, it's like, I can acknowledge those experiences and I wouldn't change them for the world, but I'm actually like, yeah, they help to shape me, but actually, it's who God has said I am, that's the most important thing, and that's who, like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's so much thing I want to say, and I don't know if it's coming out coherently. But yeah, just like, excuse me, sorry, just an encouragement that, you know, get to know who God is, get to know Him. Yes, read your Bible, yes, worship, yes, pray, but really and truly, how God relates with me is not going to be the same as how He relates with you. You know, young people especially, maybe because you've grown up in church or your parents have been bringing you to church and you're kind of like, I'm not really really sure. Get to know for yourself, like, honestly, get to know for yourself. Like, there's never such thing as being too young to serve the Lord or to, for God to use you. Some of the people in the Bible, King Josiah was how old? Like 10 years old when he became king. People, God has been using people. God is not a respecter of persons, whether you're this small, whether you're this tall. And some of the things that I've learned even now with working with children, some of the stuff that they say, I'm like, whoa, like they're telling me things, and I'm like, okay, alright, like, So don't ever feel like you're too young or you're too small to do something, or because this happened to me, I can't do this, or because she said this or he said that. Like those things. And it's not to say that adversity and trials won't come. Like it's expected, because the Bible says when you go through. It doesn't say if you go through it. When you do, know that Christ is with you. And so my final encouragement, I guess I would just say, is that really get to know, what does God say about you. When people give you prophetic words, or when you read something in the Bible and it really jumps out to you, make a note of it. Like, what is the Lord saying? One of the things that I'm not like a Bible scholar or anything, but one of the things that I was reading really struck out to me is the story of Gideon, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon and said, "You mighty man of valor." And Gideon's like, "Who, me?" Like Gideon was, he was kind of cowardly or whatever, but in that moment, his true identity was called out. "You mighty man of valor." So you might look around now and be like, okay, I'm not, maybe someone's giving you word, God says you're this thing, and you're like, huh? Like me? How does that work? But he's calling that out of you so that you can become that thing. It's a process. And for me, I got many words saying that I was a leader and I was this, and I was like, how does that make sense? Like, yeah, that can't be me. But actually, I was in kind of, it does two things. Sometimes in you hearing that word, you're like, okay, that doesn't sound like me, but okay. Or it can be like, oh my gosh, like that doesn't sound like me, but now I want to be that. Because it's been called out, I want to be that. Do you understand? And now, I never felt much like I was a leader or whatever, but now because I've got that word and I've held on to it, I love what I do, I love working with young people. I'm like, yeah, I want to inspire them. I want to be, I want to be the person that I wish I had, if that makes sense, when I was younger. So I want to be that person for people that didn't have someone maybe that they could talk to or relate to or understand what they were going through, or encourage them and tell them, do you know what, you are great, you're amazing. The things the talents that you have is beautiful. And I just want to finish just by saying that I thank the Lord so much that He's kind of guided me to certain places, i.e., for example, going back to the job, Maria for Davis. If I never went there, I never would have reconnected with Karen. I probably wouldn't be here today talking to you guys, because the way God's just done things has just been so beautiful. But, like, yeah, I could just stand here today and say that I love the Lord and I love what He's doing in my life, and just remember the Bible says that all things work for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose. And God has called each and every one of us. Like, we're all chosen, and each and every one of us has a purpose. And I just want to encourage you, if you're not sure what that purpose is, find out, ask the Lord about it. He will tell you. It's never too late. For long as you have breath, Bible says that a dog that's living is better than a dead lion. Like, if you're alive, there's something for you to do. Like, regardless of your age, regardless of your physical ability, there's something. So I just want to encourage you guys that the Lord loves each and every one of us, and we need to know what He says about us, and that's the voice that should be the overriding voice. What does God say about me? Not what everybody else says. What does God say about me? And then you begin to match what God says about you to what you say about you, because God can tell you something and you'll still say, no, but I'm nothing. You'll agree, you're partnering with that lie from the enemy, but we need to partner with what God is saying about us, and then we'll really begin to see transformation.